This is going to be difficult. Hey guys, Cadence here and welcome back to a new video. A lot of you have been commenting on my videos about my train store, asking my opinions on different model train manufacturers, different brands, who makes the best starter sets, who makes the best this, that, and I figured what better way to start delving into the model railroad brand videos than to make a tier list of all of the mainstream model train manufacturers. I know there's a lot of train manufacturers that aren't on this list, like Scale Trains, Bowser, companies like that. And that's because I figured if I put every model train manufacturer on this list, we'd be in it for a while. Plus, a lot of the really nice sort of niche model train companies are always going to be great, so it's kind of redundant to keep tier listing them. But I did put on here every mainstream model train manufacturer that makes starter sets and can still be easily available in most stores. Although some of these companies on this list don't even exist anymore, these are probably the most common brands, and I think that this would be the list of mainstream train manufacturers, if that makes any sense. So, without further ado, let's jump into this tier list. Alright, so I want to start off with Bachmann here in the top left corner. So I've talked a little bit about Bachmann, but not a whole lot. Bachmann is one of those companies that I feel like really had a glow up in the 21st century. Their 90s products and earlier, in my opinion, kind of suck. They're still worth a good bit, and they did have some cool engines like the Daylight, the J-Class, and other stuff like that. But the poor production and the nylon gears especially really hurt that line in the 90s. I think Bachmann started to really get good around maybe 2005 or so. Their Thomas products, along with introducing a lot more like modern engines, especially now in the last decade or so, they've really jumped in on like the Amtrak stuff, the Acela, the Siemens Chargers, stuff like that. I think Bachmann has gotten really good, but they haven't always been. So for that, we're going to put Bachmann in A tier. Alright, next up is probably the most well-known model train manufacturer, and that's Lionel. I talked a lot about Lionel in my best-selling trains video about how usually Lionel products are quality. There are some Lionel products I think aren't that great, like their battery-powered G-scale stuff, and some of their earlier MPC-era products I think are pretty bad. But overall, Lionel is solid. I think Lionel kind of dipped for me. They started out really strong, and currently they're great. But in the 70s and 80s, they kind of got iffy. They had some good products still in those decades, but some of their stuff was kind of sketchy. I think for that, we're going to put Lionel in with Bachmann at A tier, just because they weren't always great, but for the most part, Lionel products are very solid and still very collectible. Here's another one of the big O-gauge manufacturers, and that's MTH. Now, MTH, to me, is probably the most consistent model train manufacturer. They really haven't changed all that much since they started making trains in the 90s, and they didn't really need to. They've been great since the start, and there wasn't much to change. It's like the saying goes, if it ain't broke, don't fix it. So I think for that, we're going to put MTH in S tier. The only reason I'm not putting them all the way at the top is some of their technology, in my opinion, isn't the best. The way their batteries die in O-scale engines and kind of do it randomly is a little bit weird. And I don't like that they're not cross-compatible with Lionel Legacy. Back in the day when Lionel was doing TMCC, MTH's DCS system could run TMCC engines, but unfortunately now they've really outdated that and they haven't upgraded to Legacy. So it's kind of hard to really cross-compatibilize, if that's even a word, with their handheld systems. So we'll put them at S tier. MTH is great though. Now here is probably our first SS tier company, and that's Atlas. In my opinion, Atlas doesn't really have a bad product. Even their early stuff in the 80s and earlier than that was still great. Some trains that were made in the 80s, like Tyco, Lifelike, other ones, have kind of become the laughingstock of model train clubs just because some of them are pretty goofy looking and don't run that great. But Atlas trains hold up really well, so we're going to put Atlas at the SS tier. Alright, here's a controversial brand that I've talked about on this channel a good bit, and that's Lifelike. I think Lifelike is kind of terrible, to be honest, and a lot of people have disagreed with me. Someone left a comment on one of my old videos saying they saw a Lifelike train set sell for $570 on eBay. I couldn't find anything anywhere near that expensive in the eBay sold listings, but if someone paid that much for a Lifelike set, I'm really sorry. We're just going to put Lifelike in C tier. They've got some good products in my opinion, like the Pacifics that somebody mentioned in a comment and other things like that, and some of their scenery stuff is decent, but overall, not the best by any means. I strongly avoid Lifelike, and I would recommend you guys do the same. Sticking to that theme of kind of older manufacturers that don't really exist anymore, let's talk about Mantua. There's a lot of confusion around Mantua, I think, because Mantua and Tyco for a while were the same company. Then they kind of split in the 80s, but some of the tooling stayed the same, so it's kind of a weird anomaly with them. Mantua, in my opinion, was always the higher end version of Tycho with the more realistic engines, the kind of more model grade stuff. I do think it didn't age the best. Some of their engines didn't really hold up that well, as good as the Atlas ones did from the same time. But I think overall, Mantua is pretty solid. They also made some unique engines a lot of brands strayed away from. I know some articulated engines they made. They were the only ones that produced them in HO scale, at least for a long time. Mantua definitely tried harder than Lifelike and Tycho, but overall, they didn't really age that well, so we're going to put them in B tier. Let's talk about our first foreign brand on this lineup here, and that's Marklin. So Marklin is a German company. They primarily make trains from over there, and I mean, as far as I'm aware, they're great. I've only owned a few Marklin items, but I know some guys that really love the stuff, and they say it's just amazing. So, as far as I'm concerned, we're going to put Marklin up here at S tier. The only reason I'm not going to go higher is because I can't really vouch much for them because I haven't owned them, whereas I've owned a number of Atlas products before. But I think putting Marklin at S tier is fair. Alright, here's another company that I'm going to put directly at the top, and let me explain why. Athearn is probably up there with Atlas as the most consistent model train company in a number of ways. Their products still operate great years after being made, they've held up their value, and they still look good and convincing even up against the modern stuff. I've seen model train clubs where you'll see a blue box engine and a scale trains engine on the same layout, and it's really not that jarring. It kind of works. Athearn's blue box stuff and really everything they've made was always really, really well detailed. They always blueprinted the models. They never did any weird, like, semi-scale stuff. It always looked good. And for that, it still looks great on any layout. Their freight cars still look awesome. Their engines still run and look good. I mean, I don't see how you can get any better than that. So we're going to put Athearn up there at the SS tier. All right, here's a company called EasyTech. Now, EasyTech, for those who don't know, is one of the big companies that makes those really crap battery-powered G-scale sets that you find at Christmas time, and they also make some different ones. Like, I know they have like a Rio Grande set I see at Walmart all the time. EasyTech is terrible. That battery-powered G-scale stuff in general just is awful. I don't think anyone should ever buy it. It has no value to a collector or a kid, so we're just going to go ahead and put them in the D tier. I don't like this company. They don't have anything good, in my opinion, so there they go. On a much lighter note, let's talk about Kato, or Kato. We still don't really know how to say it on this channel, I don't think, but we're going to call him Kato because that's what I call him. So Kato is the big N-scale manufacturer, in my opinion, and I think Kato is the best company at doing something I mentioned in my best-selling model train video, and that is staying relevant. I think Kato is really the only company on this list that is always the first to make the new stuff as it comes out on the real railroads. They jumped on those new Amtrak diners a few years ago and new Amtrak baggage cars when those came out, and they really do a good job at making the most up-to-date heritage units, special interest units, new engine models, stuff like that. I talked about in my best-selling train video that modern stuff sells great, and Kato definitely holds up their end of the deal in that respect. For that alone, we're going to put Kato at SS tier, and I think they're going to be a big player in the hobby for years and years to come. Alright, we got one more foreign company on this list, and that's LGB. Yet another company that's out of Germany that makes a lot of German stuff, and they're really the big G-scale manufacturer. They make a lot of products, and I think that one issue I have with LGB is they don't really have an affordable line. Everything they make is at the absolute pinnacle of model railroad quality, but because of that, there's kind of nothing affordable to a general consumer that they make. However, they have awesome products. Their stuff is great, and it's incredibly valuable, and it really will last. It can run outdoors, and that's all you need to know. It will hold up on any layout. It'll stand the test of time. We're going to put them at S tier here with MTH and Marklin. I think them not having anything affordable to a consumer makes them a hard company to get into, whereas Lionel or Bachmann have stuff that you can buy for cheap and then grow into the company. LGB feels like it's kind of marketed strictly for the people with large wallets, and I think that that might hurt them on this ranking. However, they are an amazing company. I realized I might have filled the S tier too soon because we've got Walthers here, and Walthers is a great company as well. A lot of people commented on my Worthless Train videos about Proto 2000, which I know is technically a Lifelike company, but those engines are made with Walthers tooling, so I consider them part of the Walthers brand more so than Lifelike. I think Walthers, for me, is about the same as Atlas or Athearn. They've really been one of the best HO manufacturers. I think their stuff is on par with these three top brands, so it feels right that we're going to put them up here on S tier. and kind of scrunch the category up here, but we're going to put them up here as well. The last brand we're going to look at here from my Worthless Trains videos is Tyco, and Tyco is one that I think a lot of people don't exactly love, but I kind of adore Tyco. I think they're one of the most interesting companies on this list, and they've got a really, really unique production history of their models. I think for me, Tyco is half a nostalgia brand and half a curiosity. I don't think Tyco is the best running or best looking model trains by any stretch, but there's something really, really charming about this company, and I definitely am going to put them above Lifelike, but I don't think it's fair to put them at the same level as Bachmann and Lionel. So because of that, we're going to put them in B tier here with Mantua. Feels right to put them with their sister company. And last but not least on this tier list, let's look at K-Line. K-Line is a company that got bought out by Lionel probably 15 years ago or so. They were one of the big O-scale guys for a long time, but then kind of just started to slip into irrelevancy, and then Lionel snatched them when they were cheap, and Lionel owns all their tooling now. I think to me, K-Line is one of those companies that half their products are amazing, and half of them kind of miss the mark. I think some of their starter sets were a little bit questionable. Even though they were high quality, I don't know if they were built the best. I think Lionel and MTH both had better O-scale starter sets. I think K-Line, they're somewhere between B and A for me. They definitely have some amazing products, but they've got some kind of sketchy ones too. We'll put them between A and B tier. I think that's where they belong. They aren't as good as Lionel and Bachmann, but they're somewhere in there for me. There you have it. There's my model train company tier list. Now, this is all just my opinion, and it comes from my perspective as a small model train shop owner. There's definitely products by all these companies, except for Easy Tech, that I love. But there's a lot by these companies that I think aren't that great as well. That's the main thing about model railroading that I think is cool, is that everyone's got their preference, and that's okay. If you like a company on this list that I dissed, or if you don't like one that I ranked very high, that's completely alright. At the end of the day, model trains are model trains, and we all love them because they're model trains. I do carry all these companies, except for Easy Tech, at my model train store in Fairview, Tennessee, Cadence's Railyard. We're open every day. Come check it out. I've got some great prices and some great trains for you to come look at. In the meantime, I hope to see you at the store and in the next video, so I'll catch you in the next Washington District Railfan upload. Thank you so much for watching.